Welcome back to a new week of Tea with the Shepherd, and we are diving into James chapter 3 today. I've got my new tea for this week, and of course I will reveal that tomorrow, but it is purple and it's delicious. So maybe you can guess as to, put in the comments what you think it is since it's purple, and tell me what romance story in the Bible do you think could possibly be purple tea. That's absolutely delicious, by the way. It might be one of my favorites for this month. Okay, so James chapter 3, verse 1, and we're talking about taming the tongue. Very practical. All of James, what James is talking about is marks of a true believer, of somebody who walks in faith, who looks in the mirror and actually adjusts, makes adjustments. And so with that being said, what about taming the tongue? All right, so verse 1. Not many of you should presume to be teachers, my brothers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. So not everyone should be teachers. You'll have to pardon some of this congestion that I have right now. This sun of the something was blooming, I think, before the cold weather hit again. So not all should be teachers. Know that when you're teaching, you're going to be judged more strictly. This is why I spend a whole week of just every chapter I pour into, and I study carefully, and I pray, and I ask the Lord, you've got to show me exactly what you want me to teach, because that very thing in Ezekiel, it talks about those who are shepherding people are held responsible for their false teaching. And the last thing I ever want to do is to lead anyone astray. So not everyone should be teachers. We all stumble, this verse 2, we all stumble in many ways. So nobody's perfect. Everyone's going to stumble. You can't expect a perfect teacher. I'm going to make mistakes. Other teachers that you listen to are going to make mistakes. So I may say something. In fact, I was posting in the email that's going out for this week. I had posted in there a link to go and watch a previous video that I had done years ago. Well, before I posted it, I went to go and listen to it to make sure, because I was thinking, I am not the same person I was when I gave that message. I don't want to make sure I didn't teach anything wrong in it. But that's the thing, is we're changing. We're faulty. There's sometimes some false beliefs that we have. We hope that there wasn't, anyway, that I could find. But there's still that understanding that we are not perfect. We stumble. Everyone stumbles in different ways. That's why, again, you can't judge. And Matthew says, don't judge somebody for a speck in their eye when you have a log in your own. So be sure you deal with your own. If anyone is never at fault in what he says, he is a perfect man, able to keep his whole body in check. Which is pretty much, he's being sarcastic. There's nobody that's perfect. He just said, we're all going to stumble in ways. So a perfect man could keep his whole body in check, but we're not perfect. So in verse 3, he says, when we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boast. Okay, so he's giving some examples here, some illustrations, metaphors. These are actually metaphors that Philo, a historian at the time, also used. And he said this, but if a man succeeded as if handling a lyre in bringing all the notes of things that is good into tune, bringing speech into harmony with intent and intent with deed, such a one would be considered perfect and of a truly harmonious character. So if you can bring your speech and in your intent, everything perfectly done well, then you have a truly harmonious character. Meaning that sometimes when we say something, our intent and our words don't always match up. It's not always very easy. But Philo also, in all this conversation about the speech, he also uses very similar descriptions as to what he's giving with the horses and the ships. But also you can find it in Psalm 32:9. The psalmist says, do not be like the horse or the mule, which have no understanding, but must be controlled by bit and bridle, or they will not come to you. So don't be stubborn. Don't be like the stubborn horse or mule that doesn't want to come to you. So in order to make them come to you, you have to put a bit in your bridle in your mouth. So this tongue controls a lot of how your body moves. Now we're going to come back to that horse illustration in just a little bit, but if you can put a bit or a bridle into a horse's mouth, and then just change the way you hold it, it will turn the whole animal. If you pull on the side, it's going to go that way. If you pull on this side, it's going to go that way. So same thing with a rudder. Rudder is very small, but you change the direction of it and the whole ship will change direction. So likewise, our tongue, which is funny because I actually have a cut on my tongue, so it's been hard to talk. But it affects everything. It even can affect my speech. But it makes great boasts. Your tongue makes great boasts. It says things oftentimes that we didn't really want to say. Our intent may have been something else, and we communicate it differently. Our tongues can get us into a lot of trouble. So he says, consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole person, sets the whole course of his life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. So there's 4 aspects of the tongue. 1, it affects character. 2, it can influence people. 3 is continuous. Whatever your tongue does, it says it sets the whole course of his life on fire. So it can change and alter your entire course. And then 4, there's this affiliation of this. It says, and it is set itself set on fire by hell. So there's an affiliation to hell. Now in Proverbs 18:21, it says that death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. So from our mouth, we can either speak life or we can speak death. There is that much power in the tongue. But the tongue is anti-God and pro-Satan. So in verse 7, he says, all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and creatures of the sea are being tamed and have been tamed by man. So we can tame a whole lot of wild creatures, but no man, underscore that, no man can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. The tongue is anti-God and pro-Satan. So therefore, who can tame the tongue? Only God can tame the tongue. Which then goes to, isn't this interesting, that in Acts 2, when the power of God, the Holy Spirit, rests on the people there that have gathered around during Pentecost, or at Pentecost is what it was called after, but at Pentecost, what happens? The initial sign of them receiving the Holy Spirit was that they began to speak in tongues. Why? Because God had tamed their tongue, and he gives a new tongue. So this is why oftentimes, not all the time, oftentimes we see that the initial sign of somebody who is fully surrendered to God, who has given their life to the Holy Spirit and has been empowered by the Holy Spirit. There's the fact that the Holy Spirit comes within us when we are saved. But then there's an empowerment of the Holy Spirit, and that's what we call baptism of the Holy Spirit, which is what happened in Acts 2. And it has not died today. I'm going to do a separate video. I'll actually have my husband come in tomorrow, and we'll have a discussion about tongues a little bit more in depth. But for just kind of diving in, is this is what took place. There's this initial sign with them through speaking in tongues. Now, it's not always, but for the most part, that's the initial sign that we see with people who have been empowered or baptized in the Holy Spirit. Because God is now the tamer of our tongue. We have the fruits of the Spirit living within us. We have self-control, but we have allowed God to tame our hearts and to tame our tongue. And so it's no longer affiliated with Satan. Now we are affiliated with God, and that's the mark. This is what James is talking about in all of this, is there's going to be marks of a true believer. And this is a mark, is that when your tongue is tamed by God, it's an undeniable sign that you belong to him and that you are a follower of him. Now that word, just go back a couple parts here. That word, it is a restless evil, means is always liable to break out. So it will continue to do that unless it's tamed by God. And also when it said it corrupts the whole person, that word corrupts, it stains, it leaves a mark of defilement everywhere. So a person who is not marked by God will be marked by this defilement everywhere they go. And it will leave us, it's like whenever you pick up, we have black walnuts, whenever you pick a black walnut up, there's that black ooey gooiness that's inside, and it leaves marks in your hand. And anything it touches is going to leave a mark. And that's the same thing. Taming, when you think about it in the context of an animal, you have a tamed animal, a tamed pet, versus a wild, like say a wild coyote versus a tamed dog. Well, the difference is the tamed dog has a relationship with their owner or their master. They know that they are loved. They know that they are taken care of, and they have been chosen if they are adopted. However they were received, they have a loving relationship and a trusting relationship. They trust their owner and master. So then when the master is teaching them to sit or to stay or to do some sort of a trick, or to even with some dogs that are trained to be able to help patients that have diabetes or to be working dogs, they have learned from their master and they are responding to their master out of that love and the relationship. And that's what makes them tame. So there's that relationship. Now, you cannot do that with a wild coyote. There is no relationship. There is no love exchange between a wild animal and a human. There's no trust built up. So there is no taming. You cannot tame a wild animal. You don't know what they're going to do. They're dangerous to society. So much is the tongue, a tame tongue versus a wild tongue. Somebody who has allowed their master to teach them how to live their life, how to stay within boundaries, and they feel safer, more whole. They're not out of control or sporadic or feel unsafe. A wild coyote is constantly there just for survival, and there's dangers around, and they're constantly on edge and ready to attack instantly. Whereas a tamed dog has learned trust, and they learn how to rest in their master's guidance. And so that is the difference. It's not that the master is there with a muzzle and trying to, that's not a truly tamed animal that has a muzzle all the time, because then they haven't learned how to control their tongue or their mouth. But a truly tamed animal is one that has a beautiful relationship with their master, has learned to let go of any fears or anything that has caused them to have some sort of triggered response that would be aggressive towards somebody. They're in a good state of mind. If you ever watch Cesar Millan, you can see how he works with these dogs and these animals and helps get them into a good state of mind, a balanced state of mind that brings peace and harmony. And that is what God desires for us. He wants us to be tamed, not in the way of, I want you to do this and you're only going to do this. No, he wants that relationship with us, so that in this relationship, then it's easy for the natural flow of our lives to be in accordance with our master's will, and we bring delight to each other. Okay, so there's a lot more. We're gonna dive a little bit more into talking about the tongue, but we'll pick this up. So tomorrow I'll share with my husband about what it means to speak in tongues and a quick discussion on that, and then we'll pick right back up on Wednesday with continuing in verse 9 of chapter 3.